So here we have a mix. It sounds very nice. It could use a bit more of energy in the mids, in this area around 1.5K or so. The problem is that when I add a bit of mid here, which sounds nice, then the trumpet comes here. So this EQ here in the mids make the trumpet sound a bit too loud. So we really would like a way to increase the energy in the mids without making the trumpet that much louder. Because then we could get a bit more detail and density in the mids and bring out a bit more of this mid-range energy. And there is a method that works really well for bringing out quieter details in a specific frequency area without making the already loud elements of that area pop out even more. And that is what we are going to look at in this video. My name is Thomas and I have this channel together with Sofia, and we have about 45 years of combined experience as professional mastering engineers. And on this channel we want to share our knowledge and help you make better sounding music. The method that we are going to use is a kind of parallel compression. It's very similar to the method that is sometimes called New York style compression. And just as when doing New York style compression, we're going to split the signal into a clean path and a compressed path. And then we are going to mix those together at the end. And basically what we do is that we keep the clean signal as it is, and then we add in a compressed version of that signal as well. And the twist that we are adding now is that before going into the compressor, we are also going through a bandpass filter. And this bandpass filter will remove all the lows and remove all the highs. So we are left only with the mid-range. And this is the area where we want to add this detail and clarity. So we take this mid-range and run it through the compressor, and then we can add that back into the clean signal. And we can listen to how this compressed mid signal sounds. So these are the mid frequencies going through a compressor and getting quite a bit of compression. And that is the purpose of this compressor, to keep the energy in this area quite constant. So when the trumpet gets louder, then there will be relatively less contribution from this compressed area. And that's exactly what we want, because we want to add this mid-range energy without increasing the level of the trumpet too much. So let's listen how this sounds together with the clean signal. So now there's quite a bit more of energy in the mid-range, but the trumpet doesn't jump forward in the mix in the same way as it did when we were using just a standard EQ. Now I have exaggerated the effect to make it more audible here on YouTube, but it sounds quite nice to my ears. The mids get more present and detailed without being too much in your face, so to speak. But when I'm using this method, when I'm mastering, then I would probably have the compressed level quite a bit lower. It kind of depends on how much of this effect you would want and how audible the side effects get, because there will always be some amount of pumping and breathing when using this much compression. So this is a method that is very dependent on how the mix sounds already and what kind of sound you're aiming for. And there are really no wrong settings when doing this, as long as it sounds the way that you want it to. There are some observations that we have made when using this method over the years, so we can talk a bit about that. If we start with the filters, they tend to sound the best when they are low order. In this case, I'm using 6 dB per octave, and that's the kind of filters that I prefer for this method. They sound quite natural, and they give a quite wide, natural sounding boost of the details when we add this signal back into the clean signal. Sharper filters can work as well, but then you might want to use a linear phase filter instead to avoid artifacts when blending them back into the clean signal. But with 6 dBs per octave filter, that's doesn't really matter if you're using linear phase or minimum phase. And when it comes to the compressor, I like to have a quite high ratio, like 6:1 or 7:1. In this case, that's the highest you can go on this one, but something quite high so that it really evens out the signal. I want to have a quite compact and squashed signal. And the release can be as short as possible, really. Short enough to let the signal back quickly so that it can add density, but also long enough to avoid a sort of crunchy sound or a nervous, unsteady sound. The compressor that I'm using here, the TDR Kotelnikov, is very good at keeping a clean sound even at very short releases. So here I'm just using the shortest setting. The attack can be very short if you want to keep the sound of the transients as they are. Or you can have a bit longer attack if you want to add a bit of snap to the mids. And then I set the threshold so that I get approximately 10 dBs of gain reduction during the louder parts, and maybe just a little bit of gain reduction during the quieter parts. And I generally want to have some amount of gain reduction pretty much all of the time when using this sort of drastic additive compression. And then I can add this compressed signal to the clean signal. And for me, this level will usually be somewhere at -20, maybe up to -15 or -10 in some cases if I want to have a more drastic effect. It really depends on if you want a more subtle effect or if you want to lean into the more compressed character of the mids. And now I'm doing this in FL Studio because it has this patcher plugin that makes it very easy to set it up and also get a very nice visual representation of the signal flow. But you can do this in any DAW really. You could, for example, send the signal to 2 separate tracks and get them on 2 separate faders, and then add the filter and compression to one of the faders and then balance them that way. And there is also a plugin that can do this by itself. And that is the amazing plugin that is called Essence from DMG Audio. This is really a de-esser, but it can do all kinds of things, including parallel compression. And the trick here is to make sure that the parallel setting here is on, because then we will basically have the same setup as we had with the patcher here. We will get a clean signal that ends up on this dry fader. And then we will have a filtered and compressed signal that will end up here on this makeup gain fader. And here you can set the filter. I have set the filters to 6 dBs per octave. And then you can set the threshold and ratio and the center frequency and attack and release and everything here. And by doing this, we get the same kind of effect from this. You can hear the compressed signal here, And then we have the dry signal here. And then we can blend how much of the compressed signal we want to add to the clean signal. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.